Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
While
like,
you were on it, or
right.
while, like,
so when I took Adderall, I was able to. I mean, so I only really took it to write. Like, I mean, but I would say that like I was. It was much easier for me to sit down and take all the things that I already had thought about and organize them and put them into place and say, all right, well, you know, now I can recall all of these things that I've already thought about and put them into some kind of like actual structure. So like I think, I don't know, like in my mind Adderall does like something to the brain, but it does something different to everyone that takes it. You know,
it's an incredible stimulant.
Yeah,
right.
It's like it's like a coffee that doesn't end. Right now.
I can get a ton done for sure.
Right.
My body gets tired and I lay down, but I can still read for another 4 hours on the bed, and the lights are off. And I'm just like on my phone. I'm like, oh no, I'm back at the incest Reddit again.
How did I end up here?
I was diagnosed with ADHD, but my parents never got me on medicine because they didn't believe in it. They were always about like homeopathic remedies and like changing your diet and stuff as a method of treatment.
That's interesting. Like what kind of dietary stuff then?
No sugar, no food coloring.
But wait, let's talk about the food coloring though, because that.
Food coloring was like
that's healthy.
Food coloring was a specifically like weird thing for me. This was actually something that helped them realize that I was like fucked up. Was when I would have red food coloring specifically, I would start writing backwards.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It's like some exorcist shit.
That's
it was
tight.
So weird.
Yeah.
What?
Like my ADHD like interact or
like your letters were normal, but they were just like spelling words backwards.
No, the
or
letters
your
were
letters
also
were
backwards.
That is
I
trippy, dude.
I remember
that is
it
so
making
trippy.
sense to me though. When I was a kid, yeah. When I was a kid, I remember like I would draw
She would
speech
also only
bubbles.
write on doors.
That's so weird. I mean, not weird. Yeah,
no, it was weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It's hella weird.
It was weird. It was fucked.
You would draw speech bubbles?
I would draw speech bubbles, and to me, it was like the words are coming out of the person's mouth and coming to another person, and so the words should start at the other person, not at the person who's saying them. But I don't know.
That's tight.
That's like some shit I would
like you're
come
hearing.
to an acid.
Yeah.
It's not what I said, it's what they heard.
I have to write this backwards.
Yeah.
No, so can you write backwards intentionally?
Now? I haven't actually tried in a while. Aside from that Shining
at
remake.
any
You got
point,
any food dye?
At any point have you been able to? Like if you wanted to.
If I wanted to, I think I could 100% do it right now. Yeah,
Dude,
and I would probably tap into
that
some.
That in itself is crazy to me.
Whoa.
That you could write backwards.
And it's like an unconscious like tying your shoes.
Like the people from Macaroni Grill that would like write their name on the table. I could do that. That's the job for me.
How do you do it? I don't have that. I don't have that like coordination. That's great.
So I don't know, but all I know, I don't really 100% know if what my family did for me to treat my ADHD was right or wrong or whatever. But I do know that I always saw my ADHD as like as a problem that I could lean on to get what I wanted. And so I saw it not ever as like a strength, but it was always like this, it was like an excuse.
Oh yeah, I know people who do that too, for sure, 100%.
I mean, do you think that's like the common mindset around it?
I think probably that pathologizing it and making your kid go to a bunch of doctors and stuff, to treat their defective brain, I don't see how that could be good.
But think about what happens when you call it a disorder.
We're talking about dwarves, and it said, dwarf, I don't feel bad to be a dwarf. The world makes me feel bad to be a dwarf.
Right, but that's like, that's like physical versus cognitive.
Yeah, imagine if they did that to people who had like blue eyes or something.
Yeah.
The blue eye disorder.
Yeah.
The majority of the world has brown eyes. You have a blue eye
There is something to be said
disorder.
about the fact that the more common thing that happens is a good baseline for how we structure things, right? Like,
Yeah, I'm just saying that disorder
That's how
can
society
be
needs to work.
yeah, it,
Like
it
the
really
word-
needs we
like
can't
order and
restructure
disorder.
everything around the minority groups that like the minority autism group that needs to be kind of rethought about how they're thinking about the world. We can't restructure society
Sure, we
around
can.
that.
We do it all the time. We change words. We invent words.
No, I mean we can adjust our models to incorporate them more, wholly. But I don't think that we're restructuring in a way that's like, oh well, look, everybody is thinking differently now.
Well,
the way that
a
autistic
small
people
change
think.
can make a big difference, right? If we stopped calling it a disorder,
Yeah.
for instance, that's a huge psychological change. That's a cultural shift. If people would just stop
I
calling
agree.
it attention deficit disorder, right? That's just a huge shift right there.
Yeah, if you instead highlighted Superman has pros, but he has a few cons. Batman, similarly, everyone who has a power also has a con to their power. So you might have a disability that's labeled, but it could be a power to you. There's cons with every power, though, right? So you could focus on maybe a lot more things than other people can. But in a world where you need to complete a specific amount of tasks that someone, a corporate, whatever, says that these are the things you should complete, it's a con all of a sudden. Yeah, that's why 3 hours into every class, I've never enjoyed a 3-hour class. I was unable to really get through it. After now, I'm like, I created my own breaks. I couldn't handle a 3-hour class, honestly.
Unless your teacher also has ADHD,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Today, one of our teachers' classes was one of the best for me because it was broken up into different sections, and we segued between things. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, you're keeping me
Right,
on a ride.
but there's something to be said about this holistic model of how we should structure education, whatever, blah blah, versus the individualistic where okay, so let's say someone does have ADHD, and versus saying we need to change the entire
an extreme version,
right, we need to
that
change
might
the
be.
entire system to make sure that everyone with ADHD can make
That doesn't sound feasible.
yeah, that seems ridiculous to me.
That
It's
becomes
I don't think it's
internment
possible.
camps and
Yeah.
Holocaust
It's much
and-
more realistic to say, all right, well, when we do find someone with so-called ADHD or whatever you want to put the name on it, then we know ways to adapt teaching styles so they can learn and get on the same page as
This actually gets to a fundament that I keep bringing up in conversations over and over again since a few months ago when I really concretized this idea in my own mind, and that's teaching is so incredibly lazy, and so is the student model of education. So when we're in workshop, I'm as guilty of this as anybody. So this isn't me pointing the finger; it's me just pointing fingers, and it's we don't take. When we read each other's work, we don't take each other's work on its own account. We take each other's work on the account of what we do in our work and what professionals are doing in their work. But we never take the work on its own accord for its own purposes. And I think we do that as a necessity. It's the same reason we don't meditate on every word we speak, because we can't. It's so much harder to make conscious choices every time we use language. It's the same way with literature, with workshop material. And our instructors, our professors, are the most guilty of this.
Well, I would say,
And we do the same thing with students. Sorry, just to bring it full circle. We do the same thing with students. We can't individualize our education for every student, or we think we can't because that's so much harder.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible.
You're like a Woody puppet doll. You have your catchphrases almost as a teacher.
You
You fall back on those.
And that's the easy way to do it because you can get by. And we don't pay our teachers enough to try as hard as they would need to make education comprehensive.
They try.
How to make
Sure.
it better every semester, and I really respect that. That might not be something I want to do every semester for this particular subject, but they're in Red Comp. That makes sense. They want to make sure that they're up to date on any possible technology that they
It's
can
fair,
use.
yeah.
I appreciate that a lot.
And that's so hard.
It is very hard.
Yeah.
That's also what they're passionate about. So I wish we had more people like that. But like you said, we don't really incentivize that. We don't value that in our education.
Education is
well, I mean, part of it is the fact that academia itself is not a viable career anymore. It's not. It's like the state of education. Take thinking to its its final form, right?
Which is what college was meant to
Right.
be. Right.
Let's say you can think the hardest you can possibly think your entire life.
Oh, shit.
The most thing.
Where are you gonna go? The
Level
most
100.
thinking that you can ever do. Where are you supposed to go? Like now, the answer is not necessarily college,
No,
Yeah.
it's
right? And I think like
It's anti-thought.
yeah, no, like a lot of times people are deterred by college because they think that it's this place of like stagnant thought. It's this postmodern, echo chamber of the same bullshit over and over. Of everyone has their starting point and we can all figure things out. And like what I see, our position as educators, like if we decide that we want to keep educating the next generations, is to stop bullshitting about this like postmodern ideal, which is that somehow we all are unique and we all have our unique individualized positions that anchor us in our worldviews, and that there's nothing to the idea of a culture that makes sense of those individual views on a larger context, right? And I think academia ultimately argues, at least in a lot of the literary courses that we took, I think the ultimate argument was, okay, well, anybody can see anything anyway. That's a bullshit view in my mind. So that there is truth. I think there is truth.
Do you think there's specific roads you should do?
No, I think that there are specific truths that matter.
That's true.
I don't think that... Is that true? Is it?
I
right?
think so.
Yeah, I would argue yes. I think there are certain truths that do matter. And the fact that there's even a conversation now, an argument about what truth is the reason why people don't want to go to college. Why do we want to
That's the oldest argument there's ever been, though. Like, you
Right.
go back to classical Greece, and that's
Right.
the foundation of the idea of the academy is what is truth. With philosophers, just kind of
Yeah.
like talking about how do we know what's true.
Well, but what's sad about it is that, or I think what's deterring, like detrimental, I guess, like when people get turned away from like going to college and stuff, I feel like it's ultimately because they see the pointlessness in it. They see that, oh, let's go to college, and what are we going to do on the other side? What's the point?
I'm kind of on their
We're too
side.
product driven.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on their side though.
No,
it
that
doesn't make sense.
Exactly, I agree with
To
you.
go back in time, but if I
Yeah.
did, I wouldn't go to college. I think the only really important thing now to teach people is how to educate yourself. Like, that's the only lesson you need to learn because everything is available to you.
Yes.
I could learn how to sew. I could learn how to dress a wound
Yeah, but
online.
How did those people learn, right?
I know,
They
but
don't
now
have
it's
the
different.
institution.
But
Does
now
it
it's
matter?
different.
Does it matter
No,
anymore?
they're important too.
Well, we have an
That's the
entire
question.
we have a pre-institution
It's important
age
too,
in
but I'm
which
not
this
an
knowledge was
academic.
disseminated.
No, but I don't know that it is important. What matters more? That we are able to sew, or that we understand how we learned how to sew?
Yeah, to be able to do it.
I want to be able to do it. At the end of the
No,
day,
but
fucking
okay.
who cares?
No, but
Right?
what might be interesting would be is if instead of 70% of America going to college, which is a random number I made up, there's only 20% who are really academics. Let them be the ones who go to school, and let people who don't feel like they need to go, right? Because college is about preserving
No,
knowledge,
and
right?
but that's
I think in some
absolutely no. But I think that
I don't know. I
that-
think college is just a product that they sell you that tells you that it's the place where you think. Because when I think of like the place where you can do the most thinking, like you were saying, I think about like the woods
Yeah.
or like a desert where no one is
Practical.
there and you can just think.
I think
very
about
Buddhist of you.
I think about a
I
circle
agree.
of my
Wow.
friends where I'm hammered. That's where I've done the most thinking in my
Yeah.
life. Like this,
why would we say
Well,
it's
that's
school?
in America.
Because we're
That's
told that
that's
where
valid. You know,
it
like
happens.
we started in bars and coffee shops.
Yeah.
Like the founding fathers, and they were talking. They were waxing about democracy over coffee. You know?
The only way men can open up to one another is if they had a few drinks in there.
Well,
I
You guys want to start a country? Or?
yo, let's
I
start a
love
country,
you guys,
guys.
so much.
But no, like you have this whole like this whole new idea of like the intellectual dark web, which is like it's this whole thing that's like I think is kind of a dumb term for the fact that media itself is just shifting. You know, like what we are doing right now with these microphones is the future of media, right? Like the idea that that no longer do you need to go
It's like
to
communist
school
media.
to learn.
It's like
You-
everyone can participate.
yeah, it's socialist media in my mind,
Socialist,
right?
sorry.
So where it would
It's
be
a better-
like,
better word.
yeah, so where it would be like
Dirty commie
Those
school.
dirty commies.
Let me-
Yeah, this is like
This is
the
not a communist
Comcast, right?
podcast.
I want to
It's
asterisk.
the
Comcast.
Comcast.
I need to asterisk my previous comment when I said that no one should have held. Doctors should. As an artist, I don't think I should have went to college. Like
But
I would
doctors
go.
also go to almost like a technical.
Maybe
That's what I'm
engineers
saying.
too. Like I don't
But
want
no, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying like
John
something-
Carpenter to build a bridge in my neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I
Hey,
meant. I guess
he's
what I
got the
meant
last
was
name.
things that pertain to like life and death, or like like where it is important to have to know how to remove a heart if you're gonna be into like you should have to practice that under the supervision of others.
Well, why shouldn't anybody else do that? Why shouldn't a teacher know how to do that? Why should what separates life and death from educating people? Why is even though that's not life and death?
If you
that's
could do it for
like-
cheap, you should do it. I shouldn't have did it for as much as I did it for.
Well, that's a whole other issue. That's not the value of education. That's like
Yeah, and I'm talking
government not
product
valuing
again.
Oh no, I think I know I value it greatly. I'm just saying
Well,
that I
I-
could have got a similar. I never stopped wanting. I've never stopped the hunger for wanting to learn. Like that never stopped in
And
me.
that shouldn't be something.
So I didn't
that
need
is
school to continue
such
is
a
what
high
I'm
price,
saying.
And I agree with you about that. Like, I think there is implicit value in that we've made a sort of privilege, right? Like, only certain people have access to something that everybody
I think that it
should.
is also like an accelerated track, you know, because you could learn how to remove a heart if you had however many years and however many cadavers to practice on, you know, like which is kind of how it first started
That's
before
kind of a good point.
the university
Yeah.
model. But now they say, oh, you can be a doctor in 2 years. You can be a lawyer if you go to school online for 4 months. Like, you know, it's like just getting faster and faster.
And even to compound it, when Nick was talking about the automation thing, I guarantee heart surgery will be automated
Yeah.
within the next decade or so, right?
They're already like making heads-up displays and VR things to do
Yeah.
surgery.
Almost the arts will probably be the only thing that does survive that sort of not one of the processes. Well, entertainment will always survive, always, I think. But well, yeah.
Or like architecture is another one of those cross disciplines where it's like you need to be creative as an artist and you need to be technical as an
My brother's in
engineer.
that right now, totally. Like,
Those
he-
cross fields are going to be tough to fill with
and
automation.
He, especially because he is such a creative mind, being in that discipline has taught him like the meticulous part of it that he really struggled with before. Like if we're reading something, right? Like because he's able to, think large picture in terms of what the design is, he can sit there and map out because if he does any calculation incorrectly, that building could collapse, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that part of it is able to, I don't know, help him somehow. It like complements what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. And I'm sure like the longer you're invested in something, you know, just emotionally as a human, the more patient you get with it. You know?
One of the saddest things I realized recently, sort of, is that, or one of the most disappointing, or like I feel like I missed out, is that I only thought of educators as people in schools, and I didn't realize that everyone around you could educate you. You know, like my dad, I did work with him. I hated it. 10 years later, I wish I paid more attention. Like, even people who you dislike could teach you so much. Like, I feel like I just missed out on so much of like learning by being like sort of snub-nosed. Like, I'm gonna be a writer, you know, as a kid, and being like, I don't want to be whatever, and sort of like shut out a lot of education.
Well, you know what?
Yeah, but as a-
I mean, education or learning doesn't always have to be an active process. You did learn from your 10 years with your dad, and you did learn from the people that you hate and from the people that you love.
Right, and like as a kid, you don't recognize the things you're actually learning.
Yeah.
Right, like you probably retained a lot more of that from your father than you actually realized.
Like, what would learning have looked like to you if you were actively trying to learn? Like, you're taking notes
Yeah.
while you're
Ooh.
like,
Well,
dad.
instead
I'm
of-
so glad I can.
instead of
I
being
know
like
what an
a
oil
brat,
change is now.
Instead of being like the boss's
It's gonna
brat
matter so much
son,
more
like
later.
being like, I don't need to work, like I'll just watch or whatever, like actually trying to do good. Because I always, like my rule in life was like, I should only try at things I want to be good at. Don't try at things I'm not good at or don't want to be good at. I should have just tried all the time. That's a good life lesson.
So
try all the time.
Even
Well, most people
Fair.
don't realize what they're good at ever.
True.
That's also, it was one
You
of the
know?
guys that worked the fireworks show. He's like, I want to go back to school. I don't know what for. I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, dude.
And I'm just like,
I mean-
yikes. Sometimes I feel like life sucks, but at least I know what I want.
Right. No, that's a big deal. Like, it honestly is a privilege to have that feeling of like, oh shit, I want a thing. That's it. That in itself, like,
I'm fortunate so many of the people I know who were actually, this is probably going crazy sideways, but who were like bad with drugs, bad drug addicts. It's because they didn't know what to do with themselves.
yeah. Or the thing they wanted was drugs. That's- I mean, it'll do it.
Wow, I got crazy. And it all started when I asked Dave Miller. So like as most of us, so Madison and Daniel haven't graduated yet, but so like before, are you guys scared of anything at the moment? Like, what is your fear post graduation? And then we'll tell you guys. Well, the other three of us will tell you if they're true.
Strictly in terms of like academia, I would say, not just like what
They're
you're.
true.
Like, are you afraid of? Are you afraid
Yeah,
of
it's
some,
terrifying, yeah.
like heights?
No, actually, I'm excited. Like, I don't know, honestly, if I really have a fear about being out of school. I'm kind of, like, ready to be at that point because right now, all I can see, I'm afraid of more of right now than I am of that time. Because right now, I have to stay here, and I have to keep doing the same thing that I'm doing every single day.
And you have to wait.
And it's like I'm waiting. It's like I know I'm gonna graduate, and I'm probably gonna do well, and then I can move on with my life. And I'm excited about that prospect, you know? Like, I'm
Being a
excited to see
finisher,
what
I
comes
think
next.
is a very important and valuable character trait, right? You know, like being someone who can finish things, right? Like, I stuck it out, or you know, but also knowing when to abandon. But now
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah,
flip-flopping.
that's really important. I mean, I would say both of those points are accurate.
I think it's like following. It's just back to following what keeps you stimulated. You know, you don't stick with something just to stick with something. You stick with something because it stimulates you and it's meaningful to you. I've been watching that Joseph Campbell Power of Myth show.
Oh,
on
Is
Netflix.
it actually like well made? Because
No.
okay.
It's like Cosmos.
That's
right?
why I
Like,
didn't
80s,
watch
like-
it.
Yeah, it's just
But
an
Cosmos
interview.
was like decently made for the time it was made in, right?
I guess
Like,
it's decently
I mean,
made for the
new
time
one.
in which it was made, for sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay.
It was like 88.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
I
got
can
that
excuse
cheese.
it.
It's
then.
got
I
that
thought it was
cheese.
like new.
It
Nostalgia
was
Mary
directed.
something.
It was
No.
created by someone famous too, like a director did.
Someone famous. You
I can't
got,
think of
you
it.
got my vote.
I didn't want to say
I don't
James
remember.
Cameron because it's probably not James
No.
Cameron,
It's, yeah, probably not.
But
It's-
what Campbell says is follow your bliss, and that's like his best approximation of like, you know, this idea of like do something to completion, do something to, you know, that makes your life worth living. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, you said something earlier that I was like gonna say something about like the fear of now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Now is
the
terrifying.
fear of waiting.
Now is
No,
so
like
scary.
it's like the the present sense of waiting. It's like watching you. Like that's what it, like over the past 3 weeks I've been waiting for a fucking callback for that job, right? Like, and it's just like this feeling of like it's like worse than doom. Right?
It's anxiety.
Yeah,
That's
man,
what
it's
anxiety
it's
is.
fucking horrible. Like I that to me is I'm more afraid of that feeling again than I am of anything else.
I think the older I get, I don't want to generalize. The older I got, I'm getting better and better at identifying the different feelings. Instead of like when I was a teen, it was like this felt bad. I don't know what it was. Was I anxious? Was I depressed? Was
Bad
I?
feelings,
What
right.
was I
Yeah,
feeling?
bad and good are totally gone.
Right.
from me.
Exactly. Now I know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm feeling
I have
anxious
nuanced
because something is
feelings
making me
now.
feel anxious. Something is making me feel a ball in my stomach. Well, oh, I am feeling whatever the feeling, I can identify it better.
That
That's very
specific thing
mindful of you.
matters. Yeah.
That's like super
Mindfulness.
mindful.
Is this going to be a mindfulness podcast? God damn it. Another
Mindfulness
fucking
Comcast.
mindfulness. Mindfulness
We are brought
Comcast.
to you
That's
by,
great, yeah, let's do it.
It's hard not to be mindful when you got a microphone.
Yeah,
right?
for real. Like I'm
Let's all be so
swallowing.
mindful.
I'm swallowing so loud.
I'm not
Brought to you by
shooting from the hip
It's
here.
only $5.
Edit these sounds out.
I don't know. That's my project right now, Anthony. Like you asked
Who the
about
fuck with your
project.
editing?
The current project that I'm working on is self introspection and like figuring out what my feelings are and
Can
where
I
they
ask
came
you
from.
an
Should we
honest
go take an
question?
ayahuasca trip?
Please.
Like, how do you feel about
In Peru?
meditation?
How do
You're
I feel
not on
about
ayahuasca?
meditation?
Yeah, just like your thoughts on meditation. Just the word meditation.
Let me meditate on
Yeah.
that. I love it as a concept, but I've never really been able to achieve it except for like maybe like small tiny moments at a time of like
Does it sound religious though? Like, do you guys think it sounds
Meditating?
religious?
Well, no,
When
no.
people say meditation, do you associate it with religion?
Well, hold on.
No.
Let me back up first. We should get to that
Okay.
for sure. But like,
You're jumping ahead in my notes, man.
yeah, no. Like I do have like a line of question in my mind about meditation. But yeah, it's like I think that's really interesting because like the way that I think about meditation is that exactly. It's like these like tiny improvements that you can have on your life where it's like you're not trying to reach nirvana. You're trying to reach like a small
Nothingness.
gain of like of mindfulness. Like it's cognitive behavioral therapy. All mindfulness is it's a psychological, a psychotherapy, right? Psychotherapy, CBT is essentially mindfulness training where all you're doing is sitting down, you're listening to the reality of this situation. Like, so in other words, think about the most present thing that you could possibly feel, which is just your breath, right? And you pay attention to your breath. Being able to do that in itself allows you to, for the rest of your day, if you think about it this way, you can pay attention to the difference between an anxious thought and a productive thought, right? So the more you pay attention to your breath, the more you're able to see, oh, well, I have a thought in between these breaths. I know what a thought feels like when it emerges. I know what to do with that thought now that it's emerged. I can do something productive with it now that it has emerged. So like it's a very practical way of like looking at meditation. But like I think a lot of people like associate the practice with like this like new age hippie bullshit and like it's like
Tarot cards.
yeah, right, which is not how I use it at all. Like I meditate every day for at least a half hour.
It's more of like mind.
Really?
It's
Yeah.
more like exercise for your brain. I think. It's like cardio for your
Absolutely.
brain.
No, it's better than that because like it's not just that you're exercising. You're actually like, I mean, I feel better. Like I feel like positive about things where like before I ever started meditating, I was cynical outwardly versus just internally. So now I'm cynical inwardly, but I know how to process that. I know how to filter that into the outside world. So I see. Like I've always seen things very cynically, but like now I feel like the fact that I meditate is like it gives me some kind of like filter to actually talk to people in a more productive way. And like I hope, and that this is all by the help of like people that I've like listened to about meditation, like Sam Harris and stuff. But I really do hope that like that the idea around meditation like shifts because like it really can be like useful. Like it's just like there's like a scientific like look at it. Like
I was gonna say, I feel like in our society, like we were talking about, where we're so product driven and everything's about productivity and being busy, that meditation just almost isn't compatible with that mindset because it's like taking a moment to sort of not do anything.
right, but
in order to take care of yourself, right? Like you are doing something, but I feel like in a society where we're always like product driven, like something needs to come out of this, that product is not always like
Tangible.
evident right away,
Right.
or like it's sort of something that's delayed, or
but there is a product to it, and
Yeah,
the-
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the product is that you're like you can think better.